we're learning how to tie the horse up correctly and safely. So we tie our horses to either a ring or even just a string. It doesn't need to have the ring on there. The main thing about it is you want to tie the horse short, because you're not going to do him any favors by having a long rope like this where he could get a leg through or a neck wrapped around. So we tie him short, and almost any knot that he can't untie will work. We have the ring on the string because if the horse pulls back, we want the string to break, not the panel to come down. And oftentimes we don't want our horses to pull back, and we don't like the idea that they may get away with it by being on a string, but at the same time I hope that all of you will understand that you would prefer to have the horse pull back than to have him kill himself and break the string. So it's better that he break the string and you can just work on the pulling back part. Okay, so I tie the horse short, and don't leave any loops where he can stick a head or a leg or anything else in. Just tie him short. Now, when you're tying to something that they're not going to be sliding up and down like a tie rail at Polo, the bowline knot, bowline, we'd call it in Texas, bow line, if you're tying a boat. I'll go through it in slow motion. So the way I learned it was the rabbit, you make your hole, the rabbit ran through the hole, around the tree, and back through the hole. And the main thing is keep your fingers out of all ropes when you're tying the horses, because it's real easy to lose them. This is a great knot because horses can't untie it, and it doesn't tighten up on itself. So you can always, even if a horse did pull back and it gets tight, all you have to do is push one end of it through and it comes out pretty easily. If you're tying a horse to something like a tie rail at Polo, and you're confident your horse is not going to tie back, the one I use is this one. I just go over the top, around, and back through like this. Now, if I'm tying to anything that I have a concern that it's going to come down, a fence, a panel, even a weak tie rail, I'm not going to tie them there. I'm going to make sure that I put strings on that tie rail before I tie them like that. Now, if I have a horse that pulls back, a little inner tube like this works great, or a big inner tube. I like the smaller one because they're less likely to stick their head through it, or even this one, I guess they could, if they really worked at it, get a leg through, because sometimes they'll pull back and lunge forward. Bicycle inner tube tires work pretty well as well. But anyway, if we do have one that pulls back, this is where we tie them. We tie them to this, because when they pull, it has some give, and they kind of bounce back and don't injure themselves. So again, I would use either knot. I would use the bowline knot or a quick release type of a knot. And again, I would just have them tied short. Now, if they're going to sit there and pull back, I'll get behind them with a whip and wait for them to do it and just get after them. Some of them are just really confirmed puller backers. And if you have one of those at the game, my suggestion would be don't tie them. If they're a really good horse, allow them a little idiosyncrasy, leave them in the trailer. So when you're turning your horse loose in the stall, or you're getting ready to go play polo and you take off the halter, you don't want to leave the halter dangling. I've seen people that leave them on the trailer, a horse runs by or a person runs by, hangs a leg up, or a horse is loose in the stall and he walks by and he sticks his leg or something, hangs himself up in it. So you can just unsnap it and lay it on the ground, or you can tie it up high enough where a horse isn't going to hang themselves up in it. So just don't leave your halters dangling down. When leading a horse in or out of a gate, be very careful of posts and edges here not to hit their hips. Make sure the area is wide enough for them to get through comfortably and safely, because it's very easy to knock a horse's hip down. You'll see horses with this bone like down here, and they've damaged themselves walking in or out of something. It's just so easy to avoid. So when we have a gate that doesn't go all the, even this, I mean, it's wide enough, but it's still better to swing them in and have a wider area, especially if you're handling a couple horses at once and one doesn't run through, rush the other, and end up knocking his hip down. So when you are taking a horse in or out, walk him through the middle of it. And while we're in the stall here, we could, the real kind of no-brainer is check for bolts and screws and hooks and all of the other things that can be potentially dangerous. I've had horses hook their chest on a screw eye and pull the skin off their chest. It's just so easy to avoid. Just check your stalls and make sure there's nothing sharp on the ground, on the sides, eye level, that they can potentially hurt themselves on. As Jerry Ackerman once said, you know what the horses are thinking out there in the pasture? I said, what are they thinking, Jerry? He said, they're thinking of new ways to hurt themselves. And it's true, they do. In turning this horse out, I want to distract the horse that may be trying to, now this other one's trying to bite it, so I also want to protect this horse from that one biting it. When I get in the gate, I'm going to make sure the horse that's already in there, or horses, are not trying to get out. I'm going to turn, any horse I'm turning out, I want it to be facing me, and I want to be standing in a place where I can get out, and the horse is not going to run me over. And the horse is not going to turn and kick at me, so I'm going to just kind of keep a hand up, back away, and I'm out. Safely out. And they're staying in. We had a gap here that was a really bad width. A horse could easily stick his head in, put it down, pull back, break his neck, kill himself. So we put boards across here to make that area safer for the horse. And even in a gate, and I'll show you in the gate here in a minute, keeping the gate snug enough where a horse just can't stick his head in the gap. We have just a little double security here. We have a little thing that goes over the top, so if we're just feeding or whatever, it's always a good idea to just keep your gates closed because it takes a lot less time to reopen it than it does to go chase your horse around the farm. So we want the chain never to be so long that we're going to end up with a situation like this, where that a horse could stick his head in. So if you're chaining your gates, make sure the chain is tight, snug, so a horse can't get in trouble. Now we're going to talk about why not to stand directly in front of a horse, whether you're loading him, whatever you're doing with him. You don't want to be standing right in front of them. Their heads are big and bony and they really hurt when they smack you in the eye or the jaw or the nose. So whenever you're working around the horse's head, just stay on one side or the other of it. And especially important when you're clipping or you're doing something and then the rope is hanging on the ground, they step on the rope, scare themselves, and throw their heads up. And inevitably, I can't tell you how many people I've known who've broken their orbitals, broken their noses. So just don't stand right in front of them. One side or the other. Horses' vision is so very different from ours because we are monocular and they are binocular. So they're looking at two different pictures. When we're sitting on them, or you just move your hand out to the side and see where you can't see your hand anymore. A horse is going to see to about back here. So they've got a blind spot. You'll notice when you watch big open jumpers or whatnot, a lot of them will go to the fence with their head cocked a little bit sideways trying to get a visual on it because they don't see well directly below and underneath them in a little triangle like that, and the same with just straight behind them. That's why they're prey, not predators, because they've got their heads on the ground. They can see almost 360 around them when they're grazing. So that is a blind spot for them. So if you're standing right in front of them, you're in a bad place. Or if you're trying to lead them into the trailer, they don't want to walk on top of you. Well, we hope they don't. So you don't stand like right in front of them. I see so many people trying to load their horse, pulling on them like this, and the horse is like, where do you want me to go? So you want to be on one side or the other of them.